Emirates Flight 521 was in the final approach phase to Dubai International Airport, one of the busiest and most modern airports in the world. Although the sky was clear and visibility was good, strong winds were blowing, which considerably complicated the landing. The Boeing 777, a large and heavy aircraft, was descending rapidly from a relatively high altitude and at great speed, requiring precision and quick action in the maneuver. As the plane neared the runway, something didn't seem right. The aircraft had passed the safe zone for wheel contact with the runway, and the altitude was so low it barely skimmed the ground. At that point, the runway was running out quickly, and there was no possibility of a safe landing or a simple climb to attempt another approach. This created an extremely dangerous and critical situation for the crew and passengers. It was then that the captain immediately ordered to abort the landing with the famous command, "Go around," initiating the escape maneuver. However, although the plane started to gain altitude for a few seconds, it fell back toward the runway, increasing the tension and uncertainty for everyone on board. How did a routine flight end up facing one of the most dangerous situations in Emirates' history? And above all, what happened to the 300 people traveling on that Boeing 777? This is the detailed account of Flight 521. Emirates Flight 521 took off on the morning of August 3, 2016, from Thiruvananthapuram International Airport in the Indian state of Kerala at 10:34 local time. This airport, located at the southern tip of the country, is a common departure point for hundreds of people traveling to the Gulf countries in search of work and better opportunities. The plane assigned for this route was a Boeing 777, a model known for its reliability, modernity, and with over 13 years of service. Since its founding in 1985, Emirates had maintained an exemplary safety record with no fatal accidents or aircraft losses, and was globally recognized as one of the safest airlines. On that flight, there were 282 passengers and 18 crew members, totaling 300 people. Most of the passengers were of Indian origin and were heading to Dubai in search of employment, leaving behind their homes and families with the hope of a better future. At that moment, nothing suggested that this seemingly routine trip would end up turning into an emergency that would put everyone on board at risk. The flight proceeded without issues for most of the journey. After takeoff, the plane flew over the Arabian Sea heading northwest toward the United Arab Emirates. However, the weather in Dubai that day was not usual. A high-pressure system was raising temperatures to extreme levels, reaching 49 degrees Celsius, 120 degrees Fahrenheit, something unusual even for a city accustomed to heat. At the same time, two low-pressure areas near the coast caused a clash between air currents. A cool breeze coming from the sea and warm air pushed toward the sea by the high pressure. This clash of currents created a wind shear zone, a meteorological phenomenon characterized by sudden and sharp changes in wind direction or speed. When an aircraft passes through a wind shear zone, it can experience sudden loss of speed, instability, or even abrupt upward or downward movements, drastically reducing the pilot's reaction margin. The danger of wind shear is that it is invisible and may not be detected in time, especially without a clear prior warning. The crew of Flight 521 did not know that this complicated weather condition awaited them right at the airport approach. The crew began preparing for landing as they approached Dubai Airport. The control tower authorized the use of runway 12L, although an unusual tailwind of approximately 13 knots was recorded on that runway. Interestingly, at the opposite end of the same runway, designated as 30R, there was also a tailwind of similar intensity. It is very rare for both ends of a runway to have winds blowing from behind, creating a kind of dangerous zone right in the middle of the runway, something that could affect the landing maneuver. Before Flight 521, two aircraft had attempted to land on that runway, but were forced to abort their approaches after detecting wind shear. However, neither reported the reason to the control tower, and the tower did not relay that information to Emirates 521. Therefore, the crew was only aware that the wind was light to moderate, without imagining the true severity of the phenomenon they would face. The lack of communication and critical information was a decisive factor in the later development of the incident. The final approach seemed stable and within normal parameters, with no alerts or obvious anomalies. When the plane was over the runway, the captain began the flare maneuver, which involves slightly raising the nose of the aircraft to gently touch down with the landing gear. However, this maneuver was executed a few seconds earlier than ideal, causing the plane to glide too long over the runway, surpassing the safe zone designated for touchdown. This zone is about 900 meters long and is crucial for a safe landing. Exceeding it means there is very little space left to brake the aircraft, increasing the risk. Additionally, the high temperature on the runway generated upward air currents called thermals, which made it difficult for the plane to lose altitude normally. Instead of descending, the aircraft maintained lift and hovered just a few feet above the ground. To make matters worse, the tailwind suddenly shifted to a headwind, increasing the lift on the wings and prolonging the glide even more. The captain, believing the thermals were the cause, shouted, "Thermals!" not realizing that the dangerous wind shears were also present. The runway was quickly running out, and a crosswind pushed the plane to the left, forcing a sharp correction to the right, which caused the right landing gear to briefly touch the ground, but without fully settling. The captain, following protocols, ordered to abort the landing. To abort a landing, pilots rely on an automatic system called TOGA, takeoff, should go around, which when activated, increases the engines to maximum thrust to achieve a rapid and safe climb. However, this system has a particular feature. If the main wheels have touched the runway, the system disables itself to prevent the plane from attempting to take off while still rolling, which could be dangerous. In this case, the plane had briefly skimmed the runway, but the captain didn't realize it and activated the TOGA system, which didn't work because it was already disabled. Visually, the system appeared to activate, but the engines did not increase thrust and remained at idle. The pilots began the escape maneuver, lifting the nose of the plane and retracting the landing gear, while the first officer announced positive climb. But the computer had not changed modes and the speed started to decrease. The plane failed to increase the necessary power for the climb, and after reaching only about 85 feet, it began descending rapidly. The pilots realized they were likely in a wind shear zone and manually applied full power, but it was already too late. The plane violently struck the runway, this time with the landing gear retracted, and began sliding along the fuselage and engines, leaving a trail of sparks that lasted about 800 meters. Then it violently spun nearly 180 degrees before coming to a stop next to a taxiway. A fire quickly broke out in both engines and the right main landing gear. The captain transmitted an emergency call. "Mayday, mayday, mayday! Initiating evacuation." Firefighting teams responded rapidly, but made tactical errors by blocking some exits with their vehicles and focusing efforts only on the engines, ignoring critical areas around the landing gear. Inside the plane, passengers blocked the aisles trying to retrieve luggage, delaying the evacuation. Of the 10 exits, only 3 remained operational due to the fire and gusting winds. The evacuation took 7 minutes, far longer than the standard 90 seconds, but fortunately, most people managed to get out alive. The investigation concluded that the lack of information about the presence of wind shear, the limitation of the TOGA system, and the failure to manually verify the power increase were the main causes. The crew was not warned of the real danger. The automatic system did not respond as expected, and they did not confirm that the engines responded to the maximum thrust command. As a result of this incident, Emirates and the global aviation industry reviewed their procedures, improved training, and strengthened weather communication to prevent similar events from endangering lives again. Although there were injuries, there were no fatalities among passengers and crew, highlighting the effectiveness of the evacuations and the quick, albeit imperfect, response of the emergency teams. Flight 521 went down in history as a landmark case illustrating the complexity and risks that can arise in aviation, even for the safest airlines and most experienced crews. If you enjoyed this story and want to learn about more fascinating aviation cases, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you never miss a new video. Leave us a comment below telling us what you thought of this landing and if you'd like us to talk about other real incidents. And of course, give us a like if this story surprised you and you want to support the channel. Your support helps us keep creating amazing content. See you on the next flight.